So people, this is a video on who creates inflation, because no one knows who creates inflation. I actually learned this from David Icke. Yeah, I learned it from David Icke. He's a British conspiracy theorist, but he's told the truth on this. The myth is that governments create inflation. And yes, they do to a certain extent by printing money. Governments are always printing a little bit of extra money. They're replacing the money in circulation, adding a little more. It's a tax. Now, that's nothing. The real inflation is house price inflation. House price inflation is created by banks. Now, if you need, for example, $100,000 to buy a house that was $20,000 3 years earlier, let's say that means you've got a huge inflation problem. But who's created that? It's the demand for property, the demand for real estate, but it's also with an expanding population. So an expanding population will help to create inflation. But it's the banks themselves. The banks themselves, if they only had a limited amount of money to lend out on a one-to-one system, whatever was in the deposits, the economy would be like in the Middle Ages. It wouldn't really grow too much. But because of this extra risk, this extra little risk, they can lend out 15 times more in Australia. They can lend out 15, 16 times more than they've got. There's no run on the banks because there's supposedly a fictional government guarantee that's sort of, kind of, maybe. And what happens is the banks create the money, they lend the money, and you, instead of creating fake money to pay them back, you got to pay them back with real money. So banks are the perfect scam, the perfect business, and this is what's creating inflation. So this is why we have house prices here in Melbourne at $2 million. Do you know what? In the 1980s, a house price in this area would be about, let me tell you, it would be about $30,000. Now, in this area, they were pushing 1.8 million, weirdly enough, which is crazy, just crazy, just insane. And everyone at the auctions was essentially straight from China, flush with cash from their factory, their eBay factory, their business. Aussies could not afford houses, and that's the way it has been for the past 5-10 years. You don't see Aussies buying houses anymore. The only Aussies buying houses are baby boomers, and the baby boomers are cashed up because they've just sold their business, and two, they've just sold their $3 million, $5 million house. So of course they're going to have endless money to buy a unit or a flat, which is much cheaper than what they've just sold. So these people have been buying up everything. So sometimes it's someone from China, or it's a cashed up baby boomer who has been buying the houses. Like regular Aussies, you see tradesmen and stuff. I've attended a few auctions. Regular Aussies have not been buying. Now, so the inflation is actually created by the endless growth, and then the chickens have to come home to rest, and everything goes pear-shaped. And the more inflation there is, the worse the crash. The inflation helps to create a bad crash. And we have had so much inflation in Australia, it's just unbelievable, because wages haven't kept up. There hasn't been as much so-called wage inflation, but even if the wages had caught up, it would have just inspired people to, their houses would have been $5 million instead of $2 million. So it is really the banks which do create the inflation because of this little scheme they run. It is almost like a type of pyramiding because it's compounding. They're running a compounding scheme on money they don't have, which is supposedly guaranteed by the government in case of an economic emergency. But in Australia, actually, that is no longer the case. It's no longer guaranteed. So it is banks that are creating the inflation. Banks have created this problem, and now banks ultimately have created this endless problem we have right now, where now everyone is so debted up. I don't know if we're ever going to recover. But yeah, I think it is the banks that create inflation. Cheers, guys. Hey, thanks for watching as normal. I hope you're enjoying this channel. Let me know what you want me to talk about. But I'm very interested in the finance as well. It's part of empowerment, so you know what's going on around the world, and so you know how to protect yourselves. So cheers, guys. Thanks very much.